the Honorable Kim Worthy, our very special prosecutor.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for making this happen.
Well, you're welcome. We did go out of our way, you know.
I know you did.
Just for you.
I know you did. I appreciate it very, very much.
That's because you are special.
So I thank you for having me here today. And what I wanted to do really is just kind of give you kind of a preview of my budget presentation for Thursday, which would be a little bit more, it will be a lot more comprehensive and a lot more visual. And we've worked hard to try to explain everything that we're going to be asking for and everything that's needed and everything that's going on. I know some of you were at a presentation that we gave the other day before public safety, where we talked in detail about IT needs, and I'm not going to go through all that, but that's going to be a big highlight of what we're going to be talking about. And just to say a couple words about that, I think all of you know that since about 2005, we've been looking to have, well, basically brought into the 21st century. And we spend way too much time, not to repeat everything we're going to say on Thursday, but way too much time looking for files and trying to manage things and trying to be up to date, broken computers, broken fax. We shouldn't be using that anymore. Certainly with our officers coming in, our law enforcement from all of your communities, having to sit and wait for us to get to it, when really they should just be, at this point, faxing us the materials. We're filling out some forms, and it's not that simplistic, but you know what I mean. And that they should be able to sit right in their office and fax us the material, unless they have a sexual assault victim or a child abuse victim they had to bring in for us to talk to physically, that we had to lay our eyes on. Really, our gun cases, our drug cases, our car cases, a good portion of our cases we really should just be doing electronically. And so it just saves, those officers should be on the street. We should be doing other things. They shouldn't be sitting in our lobby when their communities, your communities need them. And so we're going to be giving you a presentation on that, about the software that's needed because of the body cameras and all the other things that I've come to you and talked to you about in the past. So we're going to be talking about in some detail about why that's necessary. So I don't want to spend time doing that, but that's going to be a big piece of what we need. And frankly, if some of these things are not implemented, we've already been lost in the dust. Some of the software that we need, we are really, really hurting when it comes to other communities and being able to deliver the services that are needed to the citizens of Wayne County that they deserve. I do want to spend some time talking about a couple of things that we're going to be highlighting. I know that all of you are aware, because you graciously 2 years ago gave us the funding to have a conviction integrity unit. That unit has been very successful, if I can use those words, and it's kind of a strange set of words to use coming from a prosecutor's office, but we should never be afraid of looking at our old convictions if we get information that's credible. And through a thorough investigation, we determine that the person that's serving time is not the right person that's been incarcerated. So we have had, I believe it's 3 exonerations now. One of them I know you've all heard about, Mr. Phillips, who I talk about often, who I've met personally and spoken to personally, who served 45 years for a crime that he didn't commit. Clearly, and that's the longest serving, Wayne County unfortunately has the distinction of having the longest serving exoneree in the history of this country for 45 years for a crime that he didn't commit. Obviously, we started that investigation about 1.5 years ago. It was new information that we didn't have before that caused that to be true, that only came from the other participants that were in the crime. So there's no way we would have known. This wasn't a case where there was an inadequate investigation. This is a case where there was just the wrong person that was involved, and he served almost his entire adult life. So we were able to do that with the funding that was provided, and we've had a few others. We've had several others that we gave new trials to. We agreed to new trials because of new forensics, new DNA, new scientific evidence. Some were inadequate investigations that we thoroughly investigated. These are very, very time-intensive cases, because we want to make sure we get it right. We don't want to go to a family and say, well, the wrong person has been charged with this, the wrong person has been convicted of this, they've been in prison, and the real person that did it is out here. Unless we do a very thorough investigation. So it's very time-intensive. Oftentimes, boxes and boxes of materials I have to go through. Oftentimes, these cases happened 20, 30 years ago, 10 years ago. And so we are asking for an increase in funding to increase that particular unit. We have a number of cases that are ready to be presented to me that we're looking at now, and so they work very hard, like I said, very investigative intensive, and this is work that we need to be doing as a county to make sure that to ensure that the right people are serving time. Overwhelmingly, we are finding nothing wrong with the convictions, overwhelmingly. But as the old saying, if one person is serving a time that they shouldn't serve, we need to pay attention to that, and we ought not to be afraid to look at it. And so it's work that we are proud of in the sense that we want to make sure that there's even just another layer of making sure. But again, new credible evidence must be presented that wasn't available before. And so we probably have, the last count, when I'm talking to the head of the unit, Val Newman, was we have about 600 cases that are waiting to be investigated. That doesn't mean there's going to be 600 new trials or 600 exonerations. It doesn't mean anything like that. It means cases that we need to look at, because we have made a commitment to look at cases when people bring forward new evidence. And like I said, overwhelmingly we're finding out that it's not credible, but sometimes it is. And then we have to dig deeper and dig deeper than that to get to the truth, because that's what this is supposed to be about, our criminal justice system. So we are looking to double the size of that unit, or at least increase the lawyers in that unit, and so we can do the work faster and get to these cases a little faster. It doesn't mean our investigations are going to be less distinct, but it just means that we'll have more people to work on these cases, that we think that's very, very important. Another thing that that we're going to talk a bit about, and we're going to show you the documentation as well, I'm just giving you a preview now, is that human trafficking, which as
Let's do this last one real quick. We have a question,
Mm-hmm.
and then
okay.
after that, we'll allow you to make your presentation, then
Okay.
we'll ask some questions.
Okay.
Thank you. I wasn't sure when we wanted to have questions.
I owe you this one.
Well, but I appreciate it. Has a study been done of your office, Kim, as far as the comparison with other prosecutors' offices to see what they are using that we might benefit from?
For conviction integrity purposes?
Oh, no, actually, that was the first item I think you mentioned about new equipment. And
Oh, the equipment, okay.
Right, and as far as updating software and new things that are available now.
I'm not sure a study is done, but not that I'm aware of, but what I am aware of is that there's offices across the state that have had paperless offices and this equipment and the software for many, 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 many years. Okay. And these are cases, these are mainly, we're the largest, of course all the offices are smaller, but we have Eaton County, for example, that's had a paperless office for I think almost going on 15 years, 20 years. And we have other counties, St. Clair and some others, that have had the benefit of having this new technology. Right now, in Wayne County, as we talked about the other day, our police departments, our systems don't talk to each other, the court systems don't talk to each other, nobody talks to each other at all. So, for example, if we hear, this is the example I use all the time, of a serial rapist or killer or whatever in another county, we have to get on the phone and make calls. We should, in today's technology, be able to push a button and be able to get the information that we need. The same thing with our warrants, our warrant requests that are brought over. There's no way that we should have to have these officers traveling from Flat Rock or Brownstown or wherever in the county coming down, and some of the very small departments in your constituencies, you have an officer down here, an officer or two down here, it kind of cripples the whole department. And so we just need to be more mindful of that, especially when we know we have the technology. The same thing with these body cameras and being able to look at this software and use what we use. It should be something that we have just as a matter of course. And it's been a long time coming, as most of you know. I've been on this battle for a long time. And so this should be something that's automatic. And I get that everything costs money, but in today's technology, when we're trying to fight crime, you're trying to keep your citizens safe, and you're trying to do it as efficiently as possible. And the dollars that we can save with the most modern technology. One of the things we said the other day, and it's in our presentation, I can't remember the exact thing, but we are rolling out new computers, and then the majority of the staff is using computers that are 10 years old. 10 years old. And so we provided, and I know Commissioner Badin was there and some of the others were there, Commissioner Scott, I believe, was there, and we went through and showed how old our equipment is and what we could be doing with that. Now, we won't be giving that whole presentation, but certainly we can begin the highlights. And I can't remember which commission it was, I'm sorry, requested a specific dollar amount of what it was going to cost, and so we will be presenting that to you at that time.
I
Yes.
realize exactly what you're saying. I mean, it's a waste of law enforcement time. It's a
Yes.
waste of prosecutorial time.
It's just not efficient. It's just not efficient.
Not at all. And the other question I had was, how are the cases chosen for the conviction integrity unit?
We have our protocols online,
Okay.
and basically the basic protocol is you have to have a new credible claim of innocence, and then we will investigate. There is a protocol there that anyone can submit a letter, even another prosecutor or judge, anybody, one of you, anybody could do that, and we follow that protocol. And again, it's very specific, it's very, very thorough, it's very tight, because we want to make sure that we get it right. And we want to get it right if the conviction is solid. We want to get it right if the conviction is not solid. And so one of the things that we're entertaining, and this is not in my budget presentation, but since you asked that question, I will one of the things we're exploring is we look around what's going on in the country. There's not very many offices that have these conviction integrity units, and I want to thank you again for that. I think there's about 25 or 30 now. And one thing that's being done now is when a person is exonerated, and we have to pick the right case. We're bringing in all the stakeholders from the criminal justice system, looking at that case and looking at how that could have been prevented in the first place. So we're not just looking at these cases and making sure we do the work. I think around March or April, we want to do that here in Wayne County. We want to bring in all the stakeholders. There's a center that runs this, and it's very instructive. And it's not blame shifting. We want to make sure we want all the stakeholders to come to the table. We don't want anybody to feel blamed. We understand that, but we want to look at solutions. We want to look at how we can stop this from happening again. What went wrong specifically in that case? Getting to the nitty-gritty, delving into that case. We can't do this on every case, but delving into that case and finding out anything that went wrong where this conviction could have been prevented. And so that's something that I don't think it's going to cost much money at all, but that's something I'll be bringing to you probably in the winter time at some time when we pick the right case. And so we're following through because this is a part of criminal justice reform. This is a part of righting wrongs. This is a part of getting it right the first time. And so that's something we'll be talking about and I'll be bringing to you in the future. So that kind of dovetailed into what you were asking me.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the case of Mr. Phillips, was he compensated at all?
Yeah, we did not, in these exonerations, we are not, we were letting the Attorney General's office know that we are not contesting that, and we certainly wrote a letter to that. I believe he was compensated, I think it was $2.6 million, I think. There's a formula as to how many years, yes. I don't know if he's actually received any funds, but I know that we did not object to that. We advocated for it, and I believe the AG's office was also this new AG was also fully supported. I know that when the new AG took office, that fund was not properly funded, and so I know there was a problem there. And I don't know. I'm speaking out of my field of expertise, but I believe that's been correct. I don't know, but I know there was talk about that. But so I don't know if he's actually been paid, but he has been compensated.
Okay. Because there was a bill passed recently to provide for that. And I don't know if it went all the way through.
Yeah, okay. It's there, but it wasn't funded from my understanding, previously it wasn't funded. So I don't know if people were actually getting compensated. But yes, there has been, like I said, we did not contest that. We advocated for it, as I said.
Very good. Thank you.
It was certainly deserved in his case.
Commissioner Baidoon, and then we'll let you finish your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think you answered my question about how you dive into these convictions. My question, Prosecutor Worthy, by the way, I applaud you for all the good work that you do with your staff. Since you're asking here, is there anything in terms of advanced technology that you could ask for that will help this conviction unit? And I know you did a great job with the rape kit. It became a national news. I'm sure, with the success in this conviction unit, I'm sure you're going to make national news also. Is there anything technologically that you would like to have that you don't have at your disposal?
We were actually working with, and of course I didn't bring this with me, we're actually working with I think it's a university, where they're helping us with IT needs when it comes to conviction integrity units. So we have an MOU with them, and certainly if you're interested, I can certainly get that to you. I cannot think right now the name of the outfit that but we are partnering with them for IT issues when it comes to conviction integrity units. And also, wanted to also mention that in regard to your question and Commissioner Henderson, we've studied the software that's necessary that we need to talk to the other departments, for example. And so that would be part of our presentation.
Go ahead and finish your presentation.
I think, human trafficking. This is the third year that I've come to this body. This will be the third year I come to this body to ask for help in that regard. And really, all we're going to be asking for is one prosecutor that we can hire to concentrate on human trafficking cases. As I've said to this body many times, these cases are very complicated. They generally come with thousands of pages of materials that we have to go through. It's called discovery that we have to go through, and the investigative materials. They usually involve, and it's all over the news now with Jeffrey Epstein and how complicated all that is. These are very, very complicated cases. We have to deal with women who have been groomed, who some don't necessarily want to testify against anybody. We also have these organizations, sometimes go back, decades. The ones we look at usually involve, I'm just encapsulating, usually involve young girls. It may be runaways. It may be other girls that find themselves in other situations. They're groomed by people that they want to use later for sex acts. They also will use these other girls to recruit more girls. And I say girls because I'm not talking about women, I'm talking about girls. And bring them into the fold as well. And so we have huge trust issues. It takes a lot of time and attention. Michigan does not rank well nationally. We're very poor nationally when it comes to how we handle human trafficking. I have some other ideas that are for another time as to how we can better deal with that, even beyond the criminal side, and trying to we don't want to treat these victims as defendants. We've had some back and forth with some of our departments who want to take on things a different way and arrest them and then trying to flip them and use that. I don't think that that's feasible. I don't think that's the right thing to do. When clearly some of them are victims. And so we want someone who is specially trained to deal with these cases. And we're only asking for one person to be added to our sexual assault unit. Another thing that that I wanted you to be aware of as well, and this is a very big piece of what's going on. All of you are aware of the Michigan Independent Defense Commission. I am certainly a proponent. I want to make sure this is clear. I am a proponent, of course, for anyone who's indigent to have a free lawyer, to have competent counsel. There's no question that that's needed. There's no question that we've had problems with that in the criminal justice system. There's no question that we've had issues with people receiving competent defense if they cannot afford it. So I just want to make sure, anything that I say, I want to make sure that you keep that caveat in mind. I have no issue with that at all. My issue is that and I get that it's state funded. I understand that it's state funded. I know this commission has done a lot of work on the MIDC. I know it's been handled through Mary Ann Talon, who I've had a lot of conversations with about this. I have attended a lot of the meetings myself in Lansing for the MIDC, and again, a proponent for it. But here's the issue. When we have now, and I get that it's state funded, when we have now the Defender's Office getting one, and I have the exact numbers, and we'll show the charts and graphs about what the report came out. One paralegal per 4 lawyers, investigators, training budgets, more lawyers for doing 1/4 of the felony cases. Now, the Defender's Office is doing that's what it is now, 1/4 of the felony case work. Not the other 3/4 that are done by the private bar. Not juvenile, not appellate, not traffic, not misdemeanors, not anything else, but 1/4 of the felony work. And they are now paid more than my prosecutors, who have all of the felony work and a myriad of other duties that we must, over 250 mandated constitutional functions that we have as a prosecutor's office. And they're being paid more for, again, not doing the full comport of work. It's very problematic. We don't have a training budget. We don't have, I think we have maybe 2 or 3 paralegals for all of my 180 lawyers, not 1 per 4. We will be showing you the state bar standards. That the state bar says you should handle no more than 150 felony cases a year. If I just look at one of my units, the domestic violence unit, we do anywhere from 6,000 to 8,000 cases of domestic violence per year. 6,000 to 8,000 cases of domestic violence per year in Wayne County. All over our communities. And that's not just one community, all over our communities. We issue about 3,600, 3,500 of those cases. So there's about 4,400 cases that we don't issue, 4,400 cases that we don't issue. That work is being done by 10 lawyers. They have 1,000 apiece that they look at per year, well over the ABA standard of 150 per year. Now, we have to be very careful because these are the cases that turn into domestic violence homicides. And a few years ago, we hit our peak. We usually do about 8 to 9 domestic violence homicides a year, which is, of course, 8 to 9 too many. But that's what we usually do. And a couple of years ago, we had 27 in 1 year. Fortunately, we haven't had that again, and I hope we won't anytime soon. My point is, well, getting them the defense, the resources they need, which I endorse, but when you look at what's going to happen to the prosecutor's office as a result, that they're going to have more investigators than we have for doing 1/4 of the felony work. Again, no misdemeanors, no appellate, no juvenile, no nothing. And so that is what we're concerned about. And I don't think anybody's really looked at the impact that this is going to have on my office. And so, again, not taking anything away from anybody, and I've met with a lot of you in another setting. And just to let you know how it's going to affect the office, we're already, as you know, having huge problems with retention, which we're going to talk about at the budget hearing as well. And I know that's a problem all over the county and not just in my office. I cannot retain people who are now going to go to either the defender's office or other places for doing, and I don't want to make it sound like less work. That's not what I mean. But the less component of work. And certainly everybody should have those kind of functionalities. Now, it's not funded we're funded by the county. They're funded by the state. I get that, as I said, but it's going to have a deep impact on what we're going to need and what we're going to, just to be able to operate. We oftentimes, I remember when I was an assistant many years ago, we could not, because we didn't have the resources, not that we should not, we could not respond in writing to every single motion. And judges at that time didn't make us do it because they recognized that we could come to the court and argue the motions. Everybody could read the motion, know what to argue. But we could not do it in writing. We didn't have the staff. We didn't have anyone. We didn't have any typists. We didn't have anything like that we could use. We still don't have that. And so, but it's impossible when you're looking at the amount of work, 1,000 cases per lawyer just in DV alone. You can't respond to every single writing one. That's why we have burnout. That's why people leave. That's why people hire the lawyers from the Wayne County Prosecutor's Office, because they know when they come from this office, they can do anything. They can do a homicide. They don't need any training because we've trained them. We spend a lot of time training with a non-training budget and trying to get the best work out of these lawyers we can. Over 75% of our office is less than 5 years. So when you hear about things, and I always take full responsibility for whatever happens in my office, but when you hear about things, you have to wonder, what I've told people and told people and told people, when you have the kind of hard cases that we have, when you have the most cases in the state, when you do, over 50% of the jury trials in the state, when you do over 50% of the waiver trials, the non-judge trials, the judge trials in the state, the non-jury trials, when you do all of that and you have smaller offices across this county, across the state, who are doing much less work than we, who are better resourced. So the MIDC, while it's certainly something that's needed, no question about that, but by the same token, you have to look at the opposite effect that it has for the people who are the gatekeepers to the criminal justice system. We're human beings. Nobody's perfect. We don't like it when mistakes are made. But again, when you're asking us to operate with those lack of resources, it's almost impossible for things not to happen. So nobody's begrudging that, although sometimes we do question some of the numbers, nobody's begrudging that. But when you have those kinds of numbers, and we still have the comparative cases that we're going to have to deal with no more resources, and everybody else has more, it's problematic. And it's be problematic for justice in this county. And so we're going to be looking at, we're going to be showing you the breakdown. We're going to be showing you the numbers from the ABA, the American Bar Association, that says what people should have. We're going to show you the level of burnout. We're going to show you how many people we've lost. And it's, we're losing 3 and 4 people sometimes a week because Macomb, Oakland, all the larger companies are offering them $20,000, $25,000 more for their level of service, and in some cases $70,000 more. And we're not, so we're not certainly not asking that kind of a pay raise, and certainly they're in union negotiations now. But I needed you to understand, and we want you to really look for and pay attention to, and I know you will, the effect that's going to have, the state money is going to have on our system here. And just another example, this is happening all over the state. This is not endemic to Wayne County. My friend, who is the elected prosecutor in Iron County, for example, her budget for everything she has to do is $196,000 a year, very small office. But the defense bar is getting $250,000. And we're the ones with the burden of proof. We're the ones that are gatekeepers. We're the ones that have to do all the cases and make sure that justice is done. And it's a little difficult when you're heavily out-resourced. So we'll be talking about that. That's a huge, huge issue. And again, let me just say it again. I know I said it already. No one's begrudging the defense getting what they need. It's been a long time coming. I was an early supporter of that. But by the same token, when you have, as you know, a lawyer now that will be at the first proceeding, the arraignment on the warrant, when the first time the defendant appears in court, there's no prosecutor there. There's no prosecutor there to tell the judge what the case is about. And so it's now a mandatory proceeding that we're not going to be at because we don't have the staff to send. A few years ago, this body was gracious enough to give us law students fund. I think it was 4 law students to appear at these arraignment on the warrants because they are hearings that can go. They're simpler than some of the other hearings. And the chief judge, it's her right, or the 36th District Court, said that we can no longer have students over there. There's a student rule, it's a supervised, but it's her prerogative, so now she pulled them, we can't use them anymore. So again, this is a hearing that now will be mandated for the defense to have a lawyer, and we won't have anybody there. And that's the first judicial hearing after we charge a case. So that's something else I want to talk about. Then there's staffing issues, which I've kind of encapsulated a little bit, and we'll lay out where things are needed. One of the issues that we have with some of our special child abuse cases, we have to have people that are well trained. We are asking for an increase in our training budget, especially since we have some of our lawyers are so new, and it's not that they're not going to be talented; they're just new. And so it's easy for us to attract people to this office. We don't have any problem doing that. It's very hard to keep them here because they are sought after. As one of the largest law firms, for lack of a better word, in the state, they're sought after because they know, again, that they can handle any work that comes up in their counties that has less work and less population.
Could you send me a one-pager for Thursday as to the ask that you are doing today and you will be on Thursday as well?
Yes.
Kind of break it down to where you need them and how much for each of them.
Yes, and we will provide that. I believe it was Commissioner Scott that did ask for the breakdown for the IT budget, and we've done that. And so we have that number for you as well. We were able to tell you what we needed, but we didn't have an exact budget for it. So we will, a broken down budget, a one-page budget. So we will have that available for you as well. So those are the main issues. I mean, there are some others, but those are the main ones. Retention, pay, the CIU, the general staff, the MIDC, and the technology. Those are the big issues for this year.
Just for the MICD, how much you think that you would need? I
think what we asked for were 8 bodies, I believe is what we asked for, to cover the initial hearings, and then I think we asked for some paralegals as well. Nothing to the ratio that we would never come here. I would never come to this body and ask for the same ratio. Even though it's needed, I would not do that. I know that that's not something that's feasible. But again, there has to be technical support. There has to be staff support for our lawyers as well. And right now, they do all their own thing. It takes away, the other thing we asked for too, we wanted to talk about was with the files, and that's something it's not as high priority, but it's also something that's very important. And that goes along with the whole paperless office and being able to hire a company to go over to the big United building and up to HQ and actually scan all of our files there. Instead of having to send a lawyer over there who should be working on a case, literally looking for a file that they need for 4 hours, a half of their day, over in the big building or over in the HQ. It's just not efficient. And I know that there are companies that exist, and that's something else that we're exploring too, that we were asked about that, the prices, we have the prices for that, to be able to, and that's something that can be shared, among all the elected officials, it can be shared. And if we have it sounds funny talking in 2019, year 2019, and talking about having to spend 4 hours looking for a file.
We've been talking about that for a long time.
Yes. So, we should be able to push a button and find the files that we need. Because certain files we can purge. We can't purge homicide files. We can't purge capital cases. And there's certain other, we can purge our drug cases, we can purge our gun cases. They may cause problems later on, but there's something we can deal with. But we can't purge our our top cases when it comes to keeping that information, and especially since we have a CIU now, where we're going to need those records. And again, having our investigators or having a prosecutor go over there, spending hours looking for something, sometimes for naught, it's just not a good waste of our time, a good use of our time.
Commissioner Marecki?
Thank you. I haven't had a chance to get to your budget yet because it's Thursday. Do you have money in the budget presently for any of this? Are you asking this
We've
up
asked
and
for
above?
it. No.
You've asked for all this?
The things I'm talking about today are things up and above what we were asked to submit our budget, which was basically the same as last year. Our first budget was rejected because we didn't do that. We sent over what we sent over what we needed, and so we had it prepared. So we were able to send over basically the same budget that we were asked to do. What do you call it? I don't know. Yeah, so but it was rejected because we didn't follow instructions. The first one was rejected because we didn't follow instructions. And so, yeah, we will. Okay. So, but we had the other one ready, which I think was received by budget, within days, I think, because it was ready. And so these are things that we're asking up and above what we have.
So, Kevin, are any of these additional monies in the budget for any of these requests, or is that something we have to make a decision about?
No.
None of
We
it?
had a continuation budget. We
It's-
did,
okay.
during the year.
Would you turn your mic on?
Yep.
Thanks.
During the year of this year, the CEO recommended and the commission approved an increase of $1.5 million to the prosecutor's budget during fiscal year 19. That was continued.
For retention, and yes.
Yeah, there was $1 million that was a, quote, one-timer that we've continued over the course of the last couple of years.
Is that the rate kit money?
Yes.
No.
And then, so nothing other than that was included in the budget.
Okay, so when you give us this synopsis of this, you're going to give us an estimate?
Yes, we have the numbers, yeah.
You want to break it to us right now? or-
I don't have them now.
You don't have
Yeah,
them?
yeah.
Okay, all right,
This,
thank you.
this is just an informal
Yeah.
discussion among ourselves.
Okay.
But we do have the exact numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would like to invite you to lunch. We're going to have lunch, and we could continue the discussion over lunch, so that way we could stay on our schedule. And quite a few members would like to still talk.
I'm happy to stay around. I'm happy to stick around today.
Okay, so we're going to break in a few minutes, and but I do have two real quick, and then the rest of the questions we'll ask during lunch.
I want to just thank you for allowing me to come, for asking me to come over here to preview these things for you, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate the time. I do have to say the budget director has also given freely of his time. We sat with him and talked about the MIDC issue as well, and so I appreciate that. I want to thank him publicly for that as well. And so I appreciate you allowing me to come over at times talking about our issues, and I think that the more that we do that, the more we can understand what's needed for our citizens in Wayne County. So thank you so much.
Sure. Commissioner Baidoon and Commissioner Anderson, and then we're going to break for lunch.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
That's okay. It will be by then.
Again, I'd like to mention I have personal experience with some of the staff of Prosecutor Worthy's office. I mean, I can name Abed Hammoud, Fadwa Hammoud, Mariam Bazi. They all moved on from the prosecutor's office. They're very successful right now. Abed Hammoud worked for the U.S. District Attorney's Office. Judge Mariam Bazi is a judge now. Fadwa Hammoud is working she's the Solicitor General. This is a testament to your office. And I just heard, I don't know if you can confirm that Eunice also is going to the U.S. District Attorney's Office in Ohio.
Who is?
Eunice or somebody by that name?
I've heard.
Or I heard a rumor. I mean,
Heard a rumor.
maybe it's not confirmed. So this is just to illustrate the point. I'm sorry. but,
Another dagger.
No, but I'm sorry. This is just to prove that she cannot
Kill me
retain
now.
some of
Yeah.
these talents. And I'm really interested in your strategy and what you need from us so we can keep these people, whether it's paying them a bonus or holding on to them. And I'm sorry if I spilled the beans on Eunice. I heard that yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe it's a rumor.
Maybe that's why she wants to talk to me. We'll see.
Okay. I don't know.
That's okay. That's all right.
But anyway,
Act surprised.
yeah, I'm surprised. But
I'm actually not surprised,
if we can keep her, you got my support, whatever you need from me. But honestly, I'm really interested in your strategy. Come to us because I have a lot of faith in you. You are truly the gatekeeper of Wayne County. And me personally, individually, you have my support because I trust what you're doing and I have a lot of faith in you.
Thank you. That was actually what we worked on with the CEO and what the budget director was talking about before, the $1.5 million for the retention longevity bonuses that we had. It was helpful in retaining some people, not helpful for others, but that's something that we wanted to continue. And I think that once people believe that in my office and across the county, like I said, it's not just my office that has retention issues. Once they believe that the county is supremely interested in retaining their talent, I think they'll believe that it's going to happen from year to year. So I was very glad to see that was included in this budget cycle as well, because they were skeptical about that. So I was happy to see that because it did help. They were very happy about that. They understand that the county gets it in terms of retention issues and that they're trying to take some steps to get to where we need to be. We're a long way off. A lot of it's going to be dependent on the union contract that's being negotiated now as to what happens, so we'll see.
Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you. Prosecutor Worthy, I gave you every position almost in the county. I wanted to ask you about is the standards that you mentioned with the American Bar Association as far as what your staff does. Has the Prosecutors Association of Michigan, have they taken it up with the legislature to get some additional money because they helped create this problem?
Well, what we're doing is we're not in compliance with those standards. We're far, far, far off of what the standards are supposed to be. We would love to be in compliance. That would allow us to have time and attention to each of these cases that we need to have. And therefore, we probably wouldn't be reading about certain issues in the news if that happened. But the state organization, Prosecuting Attorneys Association of Michigan, has taken this on. We're in the process of doing a study right now as to that effect. And so it's something we've been working on for quite a while now. The legislature, that's tricky because, again, we're funded by the county. And, there has been talk about should the state of Michigan go to a DA system where, some of the smaller counties up north would be phased out. I mean, it was, it's like kind of a regional kind of system for some of the smaller counties up north. Wayne County, Oakland, and Macomb probably wouldn't be an issue because, and of course, people don't want that. And so that's what would happen. That's one possibility of being state funded. The structure would be different, so we've talked about that. I don't want anybody to think there's any position on that. There's not. That's something we've talked about in terms of getting better resourced. So this is an issue for this entire state. We really feel, frankly, that we are I hate to use this term, it's the only one I can think of, the neglected child of criminal justice. We're the gatekeepers, but yet we're treated the most poorly in terms of funding. The police get a lot of funding. I've talked about this before, where this county gets over $2 million for funding. It's supposed to be prosecution are supposed to be in there too, but we never get anything with that. That's a whole other story for a whole other time that we've been fighting for years, because it is controlled by the county. And then the defense, of course, with MIDC, but the prosecutors are always the afterthought. When it comes to grants, prosecutors are always the afterthought. And it's something we've been very successful at over the years in bringing in anywhere from $8 to $12 million of grants a year, because we're very, very creative and very successful. We always have successful audits. We're very, very careful when we have grants. But again, they're not prosecuting oriented. We have been able to be successful in being, like I said, creative and trying to get them so we can. But now the national scene is more accepting. They realize that prosecutors have to be resourced in a certain way. But what I say all the time, it shouldn't be so hard. It shouldn't be so hard. It shouldn't consume my time as the elected official of the prosecutor's office trying to get resources to fight, combat murder, rape, robbery, child abuse. It shouldn't be so hard. It shouldn't be all-consuming. It should be something that, and I'm not suggesting money be thrown at me, but I think I've shown through the years that we've been stewards of the money that's been given to us. We've always stayed within our budget. We've always found a way. We've always tried to find innovative ways. We haven't been irresponsible. So I realize when I'm coming to you asking for things, but we have a track record of being responsible with the money that we've been given. And so we will continue to do so, but we don't have nearly enough. And I get there's an entire county that has to be funded. But again, we've never been an outfit that has been irresponsible, and we've always tried. And I've always tried to be honest. I don't think anybody believed it at first, and I get that too. But I've also come to you and always told you what I needed. I've never come to you ever with a budget of what I wanted, ever. I've never done that.
I truly appreciate what you do, and I'm glad to hear that at least the prosecutors associations are looking at this.
Yes.
But I hope they'll really make an effort, maybe work with the county's lobbyist up there and try to find some way to get some assistance with the needs that you have, because I think it's, rather than you having to do this every year, come on your knees to get more money and to make all these appearances and trying to scramble for money from all these different sources, there should be some support from the state at the state level too. But I understand.
And the
Thank
state
you.
has been supported, as you know, in some areas. So I can't say that they have not been.
Thank you. I was really good at getting us on the schedule and keeping us on the schedule, and then the food is late. What's up with that? So go ahead and continue the conversation till the food comes, because at 12:15, we do have the circuit court. We're not going to be, and he's here.
Yep.
I don't know if maybe we should just go,
Did you want to start with the judge?
if we could just go with that. Commissioner Marecki, do you have a quick?
Just a quick question. I was wondering how many union groups you have in you were talking about union negotiations.
We have 4. We have, actually 5. We have the GBA, we have POEM, we have the sheriffs, we have GAA, and we have ASME.
And the only one that's done is the sheriff, right?
So the sheriff poem is got an extension for a year. We're currently in negotiations with ASME, rank and file, as supervisors, GBA, which is the lawyers of Corp Counsel, and the prosecutor. And what was the other one then? Act 3,
We have the lieutenants in charge as
the
well.
LTs and the sergeants are 3317. They are in Act 312 as we speak.
Okay. So any of the, if there's an increase, any of that would come out of the prosecutor's budget?
I don't know, we want to go down that road.
We'll talk about that at another time.
Yeah, we'll talk about that another
Such an innocent question. And
We'll talk about it at the budget meeting, maybe. We're going to finish up with Commissioner Baker McCormick, and then we're going to go to Circuit Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Prosecutor, for being here. Just a question on the savings end. I think I may have asked that, and I don't know if that's in your presentation, but the new computer software, do we know what would it potentially save in cost with the connections, the interconnection?
I don't know if we specifically can answer that question, but and my people, and I'll certainly ask, in fact, we'll write that down to try to get the savings. But we were specifically asked to provide the number, what it's going to cost.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And certainly, I don't know if we can quantify in a dollar amount what it's going to save in time, and what it's going to save in travel costs for law enforcement, and what it's going to save in time for our office, what it's going to save with our typists, because what we want to do is we want to eventually be able to do that one-stop shopping. And so we shouldn't need a fax machine that breaks down all the time. We shouldn't need a multifunction device that breaks down all the time. And so I don't know if I can quantify in numbers about what the savings in time will be, the savings in efficiency will be. I'm not sure I can quantify in numbers.
And so do you know the cost of the program
Yes.
that would connect all
Yes.
of the
We have all that
you do have
information. We'll be
Okay,
presenting that.
great.
Yes.
Thanks. Mhm.
She'll be in your district making the presentation
Yes, I will be.
on her budget.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for
You're
having
still
me.
welcome to stick around for lunch if it ever gets
I
here.
think I will, because I think we're going to be staying for the next meeting and talking
Great.
to some commissioners we haven't talked to yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to invite Chief Judge and all your staff to make your presentation. Kenny. They call him Kenny. the Honorable Tim Kinney. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you for inviting me to appear here this afternoon. I do want to indicate to you that despite the fact that I was a colleague of Prosecutor Worthy and a trial lawyer for many years, I do find it somewhat daunting when I am the speaker that stands between me and the meal. I think that's always a very challenging circumstance.
Would you introduce your staff who are along with you?
I certainly will. I am very blessed to have an outstanding staff. Seated immediately to my left is our CFO, Lynn Roberts, and to her left is Zanelle Brown, who is our executive court administrator. We also have a number of other supporters who are here with us as well. As many of you may know, I took over as Chief Judge in January of this year, and in the 7 months that I have been at Chief, there have been a number of initiatives that we have begun. As you all know, we do have a settlement agreement between the county and the court that expires in September of 2020, but with your permission, I'd like to share with you just a couple of things that are sort of part of my vision for our court that I think are instances in which we are making improvements for the quality of life in the community in Wayne County, as well as to people who are directly impacted, because these are programs that also save resources for the county as well. Early this year, I embarked on a program bringing stakeholders together where we are working with the Flynn Foundation on a project where we have identified nonviolent misdemeanor defendants who end up in the Wayne County Jail. Regrettably, Benny Napoleon finds himself as the person who is the single largest mental health provider in the state of Michigan. We find that about 25% of the men and 40% of the women who are in the Wayne County Jail are suffering from some sort of mental illness. We think that the criminal justice system is able to do a number of things well, but we are not a mental health agency. So what we have embarked on is a program where those who are nonviolent misdemeanants who come into the Wayne County Jail are identified within 48 to 72 hours as those who need mental health services. We are able to get a mental health discharge plan together. They are provided transitional housing if they don't have stable housing. They are then provided with medication, and they are discharged from the jail, and they are connected to supportive services. We began this program on May the 13th, and within a 3-month period, we have been able to discharge 44 of these individuals into this program. It is, in fact, a program right now where every other day someone who is a misdemeanor defendant with mental illness is being discharged from the jail. This results in savings to the county in terms of the costs of keeping somebody in the jail, as well as, more importantly, getting people the help that they need and helping them get back on a proper pathway. We're also involved in a project with the Hudson Weber Foundation where we have worked with we are working with the Vera Institute, where we are taking a look at our jail use and the whole notion of pretrial release, utilizing data that we are gathering, and we are, in fact, using best practices to determine what is the best way that we can keep the community safe, make sure that people show up for court, but also deal with some collateral consequences that pop up with people remaining in the jail. Just as a quick example, if someone, maybe a single parent, ends up being arrested and it takes them maybe 4 days or 5 days to post a bond on a nonviolent offense in order to get out of jail, if they have small children at home, Child Protective Services would have intervened and taken those children. Maybe in those 4 or 5 days they don't show up for work. They lose their job. If they lose their job, they can't pay their rent. So there are any number of collateral consequences that arise. And so we are dealing with that particular project. It's going to run through this year, but we envision that we will, in fact, be working with the community and with the appropriate agencies to improve how we utilize the jail facility. The other major project that we are working on right now is that we are working with the county in an effort to do a strategic plan to sort of redefine how we do juvenile justice. We have too many people who are alumni of the Lincoln Hall of Justice who end up at the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. And we have many resources here in the county to deal with juvenile justice. We have excellent people who work in the Clinic for Child Study. But one of the things that's good about somebody new coming in is we all kind of get a chance to take a look and say, in a non-accusatory way, why are we doing it that way? Is this the best way to utilize our resources? So we have reached out and have the benefit of Wayne State University and their Center for Health, Behavioral Health and Justice, helping the court and the county work through how we look at what is the most effective way that we can deliver services to children as well as to families altogether, so that we can improve the quality of life for those juveniles and those families, and also at the same time reduce recidivism. We're probably the one institution or the one business in America that doesn't want repeat customers. We would just as soon they show up one time and never see us again. So we do find that this is sort of an exciting opportunity for us, but it sort of segues into one of the issues that I did want to share with you, and that is the funding for the Clinic for Child Study. This strategic plan that we are working on right now does involve our taking a look at how we use the resources of our Clinic for Child Study. We are taking a open-minded view as to how we can best use those talents. The court has proposed the funding for that, the budget for this coming fiscal year, and in discussions with the CEO's office, what we have looked to is the notion of the court utilizing funding that we have through our child care fund, as well as the Detroit Wayne County Mental Health Authority, funding the clinic in its current state through March the 31st of next year. Because we envision that by the end of this calendar year, we will have a new framework and a new view as to how we are going to do juvenile justice in terms of providing services to juveniles and families. That will then give us January through March to be able to come up with the operational framework from that, and then we would expect that there would be additional conversations about how the next 6 months would go forward. I do think that this is an opportunity for the county to become a leader in developing best practices and implementing best practices, and that I think that we can be the standard bearer for how juvenile justice can be done in the state. So I think that is an exciting time, and we certainly will be happy to keep you apprised of the progress that we are making. There are a number of projects that we are involved with that deal with the county, that the county is obviously instrumental in funding. First and foremost is our new Criminal Justice Center, which we're very excited about. I know that every time one of the elevators in the courthouse at Frank Murphy doesn't operate, we get more and more excited about 2022 and the ability to move into a new facility. And I just want to share with you that we have worked very collaboratively and very well with the county and the other stakeholders, we believe, and that I think that it really is going to be a great project that will hopefully serve the county and residents for the next 50 or plus years. That's for sure. The court is also going to be involved in a new phone system that's going to be provided in fiscal year 2020. So that's something we are involved with. And I also want to touch on a little bit about what Prosecutor Worthy mentioned, and that is the MIDC. There are portions of the MIDC requirements that have called for the court to take a departure from a previous role, and that, for example, the county as the funding agency is going to be responsible for the funds that are going to be used for expert witnesses or investigators and whatnot. And that's something that has fallen to the court to deal with in previous times. And we're aware of that, and we have worked with Kevin and his staff and others in the CEO's office to work collaboratively so that we can make this as seamless a transition as we possibly can. We anticipate there may be a hiccup or two along the way, but nothing that we can't resolve. So that's something that I wanted you to be aware of as well. As you may know, with regards to the new Criminal Justice Center, there is the plan that there will be the use of the JAVS system, which is the video recording operation throughout the new criminal courthouse. We have continued to expand our use of the JAVS system in our current operation. We have 59 such systems that are in operation right now. Judges and referees are using that. It would be my hope that we would be able to get all of our criminal division judges trained on that by the time that we move into the new courthouse, because that would prevent any kind of learning curve lag as we move into the new facility. We are going to be using some of our fund balance for things like workflow improvements and strategic initiatives in that regard. Just as a quick example, previously when Prosecutor Worthy talked about the need to find files that may be 5 or 6 years old and having to spend a half a day. Can you only imagine what it's like trying to find a friend of the court file that may be 15 years old or 16 years old. So we have been using funds to help us move toward a paperless operation for the friend of the court. It not only serves the court well in terms of being able to operate with full knowledge of what is in the court file, but also it serves the people who come in front of us, the people who need to have these issues resolved. Having this ability to do that is very important. We're also utilizing some of our fund balance to deal with the issue of our increased need to use visiting judges. The state, a number of years ago, maybe about 6 years ago, cut 4 judges from our staffing. Unfortunately, the crime rate wasn't listening to the fact that we were reduced in staff. So we have state court administrative orders and guidelines that we're to follow in terms of how we process cases. We try to deal with those as best we can. But more importantly, I think as we have come to recognize, we have been able to do, I think, a very good job avoiding jail overcrowding at the Wayne County Jail. The Tether program has certainly been a help, but also the ability of the criminal division judges to process cases in a timely fashion has been a help. And the longer someone has to wait on their case, the more the jail is going to back up. So the use of visiting judges enables us to keep on track, and that is a benefit for us. One of the questions and concerns that was raised for me to discuss today is our challenges to growth. And obviously, one of the big issues for us, as was stated by Prosecutor Worthy, is the issue of recruitment and the retention of staff. In our friend of the court operation right now, we have 19% of our positions are unfilled. And the reason that they're unfilled is that we can't recruit people and we can't retain them. I mean, it's sort of good news, bad news. I mean, the good news is that the economy is improving, the wages are going up, it's more competitive, but we do important work, obviously, in the friend of the court. How quickly we can process cases so that people can get their child support payments is critically important. But if we're having to compete with people who, can have a job option of selling wrenches at Home Depot, that's kind of discouraging. But it's a reality that we have to deal with. Last fiscal year, we had 73 employees that left. So it is certainly a challenge. We also have commissioned a survey through the National Center for State Courts that we're working with, and we invited people to fill out a survey questionnaire. And are you working, are any of you within the last calendar year, have you sought or are you currently getting a second job? And 50% of the people indicated that they were working a second job. These aren't people who are looking to take another job. They're working hard for us, but in order for ends to meet and have ends meet, they're getting a second job. So we also have the challenge of trying to move to a paperless court. As you know, that's the goal. It's certainly money saving, it's efficient, it's better for the people who are dependent and users of court services, but they are costly, they are time consuming. Right now, our civil division is on e-filing. We're expanding it into the criminal division, but it's certainly a challenge that we want to grow towards so that we can comply with what's the Supreme Court's long-range goal of a paperless court. And finally, the other challenge to growth, as we all know, is we're in a whole bunch of locations. You know, you can go to different courts around the state, and it may be in one court building. We, as a practical matter, find ourselves in multiple locations. It creates some inefficiencies. Obviously, you're familiar with them. I am as well. But it does impact, for example, our ability to have one family, one court with a coordinated effort that would deal with both juvenile issues as well as family division issues. We're unable to do that. We're the only circuit in the state that doesn't, and it's for the reason that we are geographically separated by several miles. But I thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about what we are doing. We are working, I think, collaboratively as often as we can with the county, and look forward to being able to help from the court's perspective to show that Wayne County can be a leader in a number of different areas.
Is there a way to streamline the Friends of the Court to be a little more friendlier, in a sense that anybody could hear a case, so they don't have to go to a certain magistrate all the time for the same people? Have you ever thought about maybe making, sharing the clients as opposed to having to go to just one judge throughout their entire case?
I'm going to defer to Ms. Brown, who was the former friend of the court and is now our executive court administrator, and she has far greater expertise on this than I.
I'll tell you why I'm asking. I had an opportunity to sit in a courtroom, and a magistrate said that it wasn't important for a child to be in school all the time as long as they received good grades. And I was floored. And so anybody that went through that particular person did not get justice in my eyes. And so it would be kind of nice to have people go through different people in order for the system to really work for them.
So, first of all, let me apologize for that comment. That's not how the referees are trained, and hopefully someone appealed that decision or filed a grievance, so that can be looked at in that particular case.
I don't know. I just sat through it.
The Friend of the Court, whole staff are required to, under the 4D funding, to go through customer service training. They also are supposed to be trained in what's the best interest of children. And I don't think that not going to school is anywhere listed as in the best interest of children. As far as the rotation, there are certain dockets, like at parenting time. Those are rotated by the referee, so families will get to see a variety of the different referees there. There's also what we call the consent docket, and that too is rotated. And oftentimes, if there's anything like where there's a case backlog, oftentimes you won't go to your assigned referee because there's just too many cases, that those are also spread out. So those opportunities are there for families to not just have one particular referee where they're constantly not receiving the appropriate attention or the appropriate customer service. And like I said, if they do encounter that, we do have information there where they can file grievances. And because of the technology, the chief referee can look at what actually transpired in the courtroom and take the appropriate actions there.
I almost made a complaint, but I didn't do it. Thank you. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're right.
Thank you, Judge and staff, for being here. I almost forgot now what I wanted to say. But because the state cut your judges, now when you have to have visiting judges, who pays for that? Is it the state or it comes out of your budget?
Comes out of our budget.
Comes out of your budget. Do you have to have that many come in?
We do. In order for the work to be resolved in a timely fashion, we feel that we need visiting judges, particularly like in the criminal division. We also have one in the almost full-time in the juvenile court as well. That doesn't mean that we use visiting judges at the drop of a hat. To the extent that we can have colleagues within different divisions help out and take care of things that may be a 2-week problem or something like that. We do use colleagues like that, but otherwise we do need to have visiting judges come in. We have a judge in the criminal division, quite frankly, who's been off on a medical issue for several months, and we don't want people having their cases adjourned for months and months, particularly if they've had their liberty restrained and they're in the Wayne County Jail waiting for their trial. So it's a problematic issue for us.
Yeah, I know they've been cutting judges for some time from Detroit. Do we talk to the lobbyists or the legislators about the need that we have to have so many visiting judges?
Yes, well, I will tell you that every other year there's a study done with regards to what are the needs of each particular court, and we are awaiting the results from the state court administrator's office as to what our needs or what our staffing will be. Our position is that we would like those positions restored because we think the workload justifies that, but that's a process that takes some lengths, and we don't have any definite decision at this point, other than I think we can rely on the fact that they're not going to cut us anymore.
Oh. Okay. Now, when you move into your new building, will you be able to consolidate all of your departments there?
No, the new courthouse that we are moving into is just for the criminal division.
Oh.
It is a replacement for the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice. So it will accommodate that operation, but the remaining divisions remain in their current locations. We've had some discussions with the CEO's office about the Lincoln Hall of Justice, which I think everybody on the planet recognizes needs to be replaced, and we're trying to move forward on making some progress in that regard. But the new courthouse will just hold the criminal division.
Wow. All right. Thank you. Thank you for
You're
being
welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Welcome, Judge Kenny.
Thank you.
I just wanted to bring to you, I guess, and again, it's about friend of the court. I probably get more complaints about the friend of the court, and I understand a large part of that is the issues that it's such a difficult, I guess, court to administer, and but I don't know what that's coming from. Yeah, friend of the court feedback. But the complaints I get typically are that people are being treated rudely very poorly, not being responsive to the needed changes that need to be made, and the child support payments relative to a change of jobs, and that it takes them a longer time to respond to those needed changes. And I don't know what can be done about that unless there's some type of I can imagine how many complaints they might get, whether or not it's there's some system that you could put in place to deal with those. And then I have one other one after that.
Sure. Let me once again sort of defer to Ms. Brown on this issue, but preliminarily let me indicate that the friend of the court is where we have our single biggest number of vacancies and our biggest retention challenge. And when we have that many vacancies, it means that the remaining staff has to process more material and more issues, and that I think that gets directly to one of your points, Commissioner, and that is the response time not being as timely as certainly the families would wish, and quite frankly, in many instances, I'm sure, justifiably so. Rudeness is a whole another issue. My Irish grandmother used to say, good manners don't cost you anything. And that's something that we need to instill, and I think Ms. Brown can share with you that we do have a mechanism for people to file grievances or complaints that do get acted on.
So just as far as the caseload, there's about 280,000 cases in the front of the court, and there's about 250 employees, and you're dealing with the vacancy rate that we've already talked about. All of the people are hired in the front of the court. Of course, they're tested, they interview, they're given the appropriate training, they're given training about what's legal information, what's legal assistance, and how to make sure you're doing the appropriate job there, and what's good customer service. If we don't hear back from people, we don't know who's doing what and what needs to be corrected. In all of the offices on the front of the court, in all of the lobbies, there should be, and I will go back and check, a sign posted that says that if you didn't receive the services that you were entitled to, or if someone was rude, that you do have the right to file a grievance. You can get the grievance form right there. You can get the grievance form online. And that grievance has to be investigated. It has to be reported to the state court administrator's office, and you're entitled to a response.
Okay.
And that's usually how we are able to know when people are not receiving the services they're entitled to. Otherwise, we don't know.
Right.
Because the supervisor isn't usually sitting right there next to the person and can address it. And of course, people may not even be aware themselves of how they're coming across, and they need that feedback.
Right. Yeah, and I understand it could be partly the problem that the person created themselves too, because their attitude when they contacted them. Do we use like a monitoring of the phone system? Like there's many times you'll call and it says your voice, your mail, or your call may be recorded to ensure that you're getting the best service.
Most of our friend of the court calls go to our call center.
Okay.
They don't go to the employees who are down here. We have a contracted call center, and they have actual supervisors who will queue in on the various operators' calls and track and monitor to see the services delivered.
Okay. So the employee may not, I mean, this is sort of a random, and it's something that might encourage them to treat people better if they don't know if they're being monitored.
Exactly.
At that time. So it's an anonymous type selection. Okay. And the other thing I had was the caseload of the individual judges in the Third Circuit as compared to the number of cases that are as compared to those other courts, and their number of cases that individual judges are adjudicating as far as their processing, how long and how many cases, how does that stack up against circuit courts around the state?
So if you're looking at the family division, our family judges have about 1,200 cases each. In other jurisdictions, it would probably be about 400 or so for the family division. One of the things that is unique about Wayne County, mostly in our family division, when we're looking at cases, we're talking about paternity and never married parents. Where you're looking at the other counties, you're usually talking about people who have been together, there's been some type of relationship, so the absent parent has a relationship built with that child, so it's easier to establish. When you turn the lens back on Wayne County, you're looking at probably somebody who doesn't know that they've even been, they fathered their child until they got a complaint, or the process server shows up at the door and says, here's the complaint. Then you have to go through scheduling genetic testing. You have to make sure you've looked out for the domestic violence indicators. And around the state, you get 364 days for every domestic relation case, except for paternity and family support. You get 238 days. So we don't have enough people. We have a tighter, shorter time frame in which we're trying to bring these cases to resolution. And you have people who may not have a relationship, so it's trying to build that relationship there so you can actually protect the best interests of the children. And it's challenging.
Yeah, I guess more I'm talking about the productivity of the judges, individual judges that are in the Third Circuit Court, because I know there's been, of course, in years past, some things that have hit the media about judges not working full days, not carrying their share of the load, and I don't know how it's probably very difficult to monitor that, but I would assume that it shows up pretty quickly with the number of cases that they resolve, and when it comes down to that.
And most of our judges have like a 98% rate as far as resolving cases within the times that are set by the State Court Administrator's Office. There may be a variant here or there, but pretty much Wayne County does very good when it comes to that statistic.
Okay.
The most challenging part, like I said, is with the paternities where the numbers go down.
Right. All right. Thank you.
Commissioner Maraki?
Thank you. Judge, I'm wondering about something. You've been pretty verbal. Well, you've emphasized the fact that the Wayne County Sheriff's their first priority is to staff in the jail. And I'm wondering if you know about the warrant program that the CEO and the sheriff and the prosecutor have come forward with. I guess the CEO, $1.4 million.
It's 1.7.
1.7, and we'll use 12 sheriffs, 13 sheriffs?
There's 10 sheriffs. Right now, there's 10 sheriff officers in command and 2 prosecutors, and the number of prosecutors, I'm told, is going to be increasing.
Okay, and this is a warrant looking for people that are out on warrant, but it would be using some of the sheriffs that we employ, and I'm wondering if you knew about it and what your opinion is about that.
Well, I haven't been privy to the details about it. For those of you who may not know, I monitor the consent order with regards to the jail. We meet with all the stakeholders, the sheriff, the CEO's office, and also the commission council, as well, and the inmates' representatives. And we try to problem solve and deal with issues. This is not an issue that has come up at our meetings. I mean, I'm not aware of it. If this is arresting outstanding felony warrant individuals, I think that's certainly a very good idea, getting those who have outstanding felony cases off the streets and getting those cases processed. I'm certainly very supportive of that. probably know, a number of years ago, in the opinion that I wrote after a hearing, I indicated that, in my view, that, constitutionally, the sheriff is required to run the jail and also provide security in the circuit court. I recognize that as a practical matter, that's not everything they do, but there are the realities that there are services that have to be provided in the jail pursuant to the consent agreement, that inmates are allowed to have family visitation, and we can't shut that down because there's a shortage of deputies. I would hope and expect that provisions have been made so that there won't be any reduction in services to inmates, and that the conditions of the consent agreement will be covered. But since you've brought that to my attention, it's certainly something we'll end up discussing.
Okay.
I think that, if there's somebody who's wanted on a carjacking or something that's out on the loose, the degree that that person can get picked up, that's fine. But we also have to recognize, first and foremost, the consent agreement that's been in existence for decades still has to be complied with until we move into the new jail. And that's just a reality. And we also know that there's a huge vacancy rate in the sheriff's department. So,
Well, thank you
That's
for
my
that.
take. That's my
It was
take.
indicated that you knew all about it, so I was wondering if you did. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Baker McCormick?
Thank you, Judge Kenny. And a question to the budget, 2019-2020. The drug court for juvenile, then you have adult court, CCF,
it's a child care fund.
okay, and that's juvenile court. But I also see a urban drug court, and then, yes, urban drug court. What's the difference in those? And I don't see it on this 2020 budget.
Well, I'm going to defer to some follow-up to Ms. Roberts, but I believe that historically the urban drug court program is one for adults rather than for juveniles, and it is a grant-funded position, or money comes through the state for that particular program, and it is focused, I believe, on defendants from the city of Detroit.
Okay.
Is that correct?
I can't, if I may, I can't confirm the exact, yes, I'm looking at my deputy court administrator from the criminal division, and she's shaking her head yes.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay, and so I don't see it on the 2019-2020 budget. Is that something that's gone away, and what did it do, or what services did it provide?
Yes, so, and I'm not certain if yeah, we may, let the deputy court administrator from the criminal division,
Okay,
Alyssa
great.
Shannon, if you don't mind,
That
she'll
would
come
be
up and
great.
speak to it.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The Urban Drug Court program was a governor-sponsored grant program for the city of Detroit. It was just like the adult drug treatment court, but it had a very specific focus. When the new governor took office, that they eliminated that program and funding for it.
Okay, and so what did it do? What was the, can you give me some details?
It was just like the adult drug court program. It is a specialty court it was a specialty court program that offered services and such for defendants. It was an alternative probation program, more intense.
Okay.
More intense supervision from the court, more intense supervision from Department of Corrections to rehabilitate, if you will, defendants charged with drug crimes, primarily non-assaultive offenses that were City of Detroit residents.
Okay. And as you stated, I guess we won't have that program. And how is that going to impact citizens that were in the program or that could have potentially been in that program? Is there something to supplement that program?
The Adult Drug Treatment Court program is still ongoing with Third Circuit, and they have absorbed many of those cases into that program.
Okay. And what does that look like, the Adult Drug Court program?
Well, I was a drug court judge for 12 years, so
Great.
I can
So you
share
can
with you.
Sure.
It is, as Ms. Shannon indicated, it's a program that is designed to deal with nonviolent offenders who have a serious drug problem or addiction, and it is designed to help get them clean, help them get on a pathway to a better life, and also to stop them from coming back. The fact of the matter is, those who have drug problems keep coming back over and over again, and there's no judge that wants to be the one who's pushing the revolving door in the criminal justice system. And so it's a recognition of the fact that, yeah, you may have somebody who has a drug problem and they go out and they steal, but if you just treat the theft issue and you don't treat why they're out stealing, you're just going to keep processing those folks over and over again. It becomes expensive, and you're not doing any good for the person who has that particular issue. So it's been successful, and we that's why we've done it for probably 20 years.
Great, great. And so with the opioid epidemic, is that also part of this? Is it the program encompasses that? Or is it just certain types of drugs? I
think that traditionally, and Ms. Shannon may disagree, but I think we have traditionally looked at those who were abusing serious drugs like heroin or cocaine or methamphetamine, things like that. It's not designed for somebody who's smoking marijuana all the time or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Add another component. In the juvenile division, there is, and I can't recall exactly, but I believe there's a federal grant that we received that did put a little more emphasis on the opioid epidemic so that they could address some of those. Now, one of the challenges, though, in Wayne, when you look at the statistics of what people are using, you find a lot more people, especially in Detroit. Detroit may abuse marijuana, the youth may abuse marijuana more, so sometimes you go in other regions, there'd be more of an opioid use. So we do what we can to treat the youth, and I'll speak on the juvenile side, based on, the situations that they're presenting when they come through the court.
Okay. And then for the Clinic for Child Studies, is that what part of where you get the treatment programs from?
The clinic does.
Okay.
The clinic does like therapy, and one of the things they don't do is actually treatment for substance abuse.
Okay.
That will be referred out to a community agency or something like that.
So if they were born addicted, has there been any studies that tie back to the addiction in these studies? Do you know?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right. And the grievance that the commissioner talked about, when there is a grievance, Is the magistrate or judge changed because of the grievance?
We probably will not change
Because I was just concerned about if most people may not submit a grievance if they believe it might affect their, their outcomes.
Every grievance is looked at individually, and we try to address the behavior and correct the behavior. So if a referee doesn't articulate or doesn't understand what is really important when it comes to making a custody or parenting time decision, that referee will then go back to training and be given an opportunity and then monitor to make sure that going forward they do. The referee could have corrective actions all the way up to being removed from the appointment.
Okay. But the person that is reporting them may feel some anxiety about reporting them. Do you agree with that? Or is there some method that if they report that their name or their identity is not provided?
Retaliation.
Yeah.
We haven't had that instance occur. We've had instances where we have had to discipline referees. Mm-hmm. We haven't had where it's come to our attention that there's been any retribution to the client or anything like that. And that definitely would be a reason for us to release the referee, because the referee is serving at the request of the chief judge.
I guess I'm just wondering how many people file a grievance.
We end up with about 50 to 60 a year.
Okay.
Most of them are based at the customer service level when we're talking about employees. Very few are addressed at the referee level.
Okay.
Oftentimes, if a decision is inappropriate, the parties have a right to take it to their judge. So if it's outcome based, they have a right to appeal. And if there's some things that are coming out where, like, say, if the parties even tell it to the judge, then the judge will contact the chief referee. The chief referee can investigate from that. So everything doesn't necessarily have to come from a grievance, but it's just letting you know that the grievance process is available there if the parties feel that there is something that needs to be addressed and want to use that route to do it.
Okay, and one last question. The child support issue that was talked about earlier, there are certain mandates that I've received complaints about the amount where the livelihood of the person, they really couldn't afford the amount that was being demanded. If both sides agree to a amount, I know you're shaking your head, but is there a way that we can?
So let me do child support one-on-one really quickly.
Okay.
We don't make the rules of what the support should be. The state sends us a guideline down, and so we have to make sure that every time we have this set of circumstances come through, and this is the financial set of circumstances, how many children, what's your income, how many other children do you have a legal responsibility for? We put it in the computer, it spits out a number.
Right, and I get that. I understand it's a mandate, and what I'm asking, or I guess that would be on the state level, that we would have to try to, I guess, lobby.
But there's a caveat.
Okay,
if the person is not receiving public assistance, the person who's supposed to be receiving the support, if they agree to something other than, and the court is convinced that there has been no duress or coercion, the court can adopt that agreement. It's usually you don't have that sense of freedom if there is public assistance involved. And the public assistance can be the bridge card, medical assistance, daycare, or even cash assistance. But if there is nothing like that involved, the parent does have more freedom to determine what could happen financially.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Just one question. Is it common that people who don't show up for court can be sworn in over the phone to testify?
They ask that if you want a telephonic hearing, that you send something to the friend of the court ahead of time asking for that telephonic hearing so the arrangements can be made. And oftentimes they're granted.
Okay. Thank you. Good to know. Any other questions? The food is ready.
Just a quick comment.
Commissioner Anderson?
Judge Kenny, I hope you never let this young lady go here, Mrs. Brown, because I know she was there. I don't know how many years you've been with the court, but you're 22, a wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Thank you.
And I think he fights for every one of them, and he just can't keep them all. But thank you. You've been a wonderful public servant.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
I will.
I think I will let Mr. Abel finish our conversation,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
and then lunch will be served.
And also, Judge Kenny, kudos to your staff for their responsiveness in dealing with the questions that we had and putting together the data for this committee. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Commissioner Baidoon, go ahead.
Might as well do it before lunch.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Judge Kenny, thank you, and thank you to your wonderful staff. It's very obvious you have a lot of challenges similar to Prosecutor Kim Worthy, and I applaud you for all the work you do with the resources that you have at your disposal. A couple of questions. It struck me that you said last year you had 73 employees left, and you have 19 position unfilled right now, is it?
19%.
Oh, 19%.
19% of our friend of the court positions are vacant at this point.
This leads me to my question. What is the average starting salary for a staff at the front of the court?
Well, the problem is at the entry level. That's where we have our greatest challenge, and that's, 28? I think.
28. There's some that are 26.
26,000.
Yeah. My other question, Judge Kenny, with the legalization of marijuana, do you anticipate or have you seen any decline in your cases overall in Wayne County? How is that this new law, how is that gonna impact the court system, do you think?
I don't know how it's going to impact the district courts, the lower level courts where you see the possession of marijuana cases come through. The Third Circuit Court Criminal Division handles the felony cases, where the only marijuana cases that would conceivably come in would be delivery of large amounts of marijuana. I think it's too early to tell, but our criminal division, just to give you sort of a brief view, 25% of all the felony cases in the state of Michigan get processed through the Frank Murphy Hall of Justice, and almost 40% of all the capital cases. That's the murders, the rapes, the carjackings, and the robberies. So 40% of those throughout in the entire state come out of this building. So we're busy, quite frankly, with things a lot more serious than marijuana at this point.
Thank you. This concludes our budget presentation by the Circuit Court. Thank you for coming. Thank you for the great job you're doing. We're looking forward to all of your good reports. And thank you for the initiatives. Those sound like a great program. And you're welcome to stay for lunch. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item, F, such other matters as may be properly submitted before the committee.
I have none. I hear none.
Item G, public comments.
Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Anyone from the public wishing to comment? Next item.
Item H, adjournment.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor, say aye. We're adjourned.